Johnny gagged and I almost dropped my hot fudge sundae. Cherry? We both said at the same time. The Soch? Yeah, Dally said. She came over to the vacant lot the night Two-Bit was jumped. Shepard and some of his outfit and us were hanging out around there when she drives up in her little old Stingray. That took a lot of nerve. Some of us was for jumping her then and there, her being the dead kid's girl and all, but Two-Bit stopped us. Man, next time I want a broad, I'll pick up my own kind. Yeah, Johnny said slowly, and I wondered if, like me, he was remembering another voice, also tough and just deepened into manhood, saying, "Next time you want a broad, pick up your own kind." It gave me the creeps. Dally was going on. She said she felt that the whole mess was her fault, which it is, and that she'd keep up with what was coming off of the Soches in the rumble and would testify that the Soches were drunk and looking for a fight and that you fought back in self-defense. He gave a grim laugh. That little girl sure does hate me. I offered to take her over to the Dingo for a Coke, and she said no thank you and told me where I could go in very polite terms. She was afraid of loving you, I thought. So, Cherry Valance, the cheerleader, Bob's girl, the Soch, was trying to help us. No, it wasn't Cherry the Soch who was helping us. It was Cherry the dreamer who watched sunsets and couldn't stand fights. It was hard to believe a Soch would help us, even a Soch that dug sunsets. Dally didn't notice. He'd forgotten about it already. Man, this place is out of it. What do they do for kicks around here? Play checkers? Dally surveyed the scene without interest. I ain't never been in the country before. Have you two? Johnny shook his head, but I said, Dad used to take us all hunting. I've been in the country before. How'd you know about the church? I got a cousin that lives around here somewheres. Tipped me off that it'd make a tough hideout in case of something. Hey, Pony Boy, I heard you were the best shot in the family. Yeah, I said. Derry always got the most ducks, though. Him and Dad. Soda and I goofed around too much, scared most of our game away. I couldn't tell Dally that I hated to shoot things. He'd think I was soft. That was a good idea. I mean, cutting your hair and bleaching it. They printed your descriptions in the paper, but you sure wouldn't fit 'em now. Johnny had been quietly finishing his 5th barbecue sandwich, but now he announced, We're going back and turn ourselves in. It was Dally's turn to gag. Then he swore a while. Then he turned to Johnny and demanded, What? I said, We're going back and turn ourselves in, Johnny repeated in a quiet voice. I was surprised but not shocked. I had thought about turning ourselves in lots of times, but apparently the whole idea was a jolt to Dallas. I got a good chance of being let off easy, Johnny said desperately, and I didn't know if it was Dally he was trying to convince or himself. I ain't got no record with the fuzz, and it was self-defense. Pony Boy and Cherry can testify to that, and I don't aim to stay in that church all my life. That was quite a speech for Johnny. His big black eyes grew bigger than ever at the thought of going to the police station, for Johnny had a deathly fear of cops. But he went on. We won't tell that you helped us, Dally, and we'll give you back the gun and what's left of the money, and we'll say we hitchhiked back so you won't get into trouble, okay? Dally was chewing the corner of his ID card, which gave his age as 21 so he could buy liquor. You sure you want to go back? Us greasers get it worse than anyone else. Johnny nodded. I'm sure. It ain't fair for Pony Boy to have to stay up in that church with Derry and Soda worrying about him all the time. I don't guess, he swallowed and tried not to look eager. I don't guess my parents are worried about me or anything. The boys are worried, Dally said in a matter-of-fact voice. Two-Bit was going to Texas to hunt for you. My parents, Johnny repeated doggedly. Did they ask about me? No, snapped Dally. They didn't. Blasted, Johnny, what do they matter? Shoot, my old man don't give a hang whether I'm in jail or dead or in a car wreck or drunk in the gutter. That don't bother me none. Johnny didn't say anything, but he stared at the dashboard with such hurt bewilderment that I could have bawled. Dally cussed under his breath, and he nearly tore out the transmission of the T-Bird as we roared out of the Dairy Queen. I felt sorry for Dally. He meant it when he said he didn't care about his parents, but he and the rest of the gang knew Johnny cared, and they did everything they could to make it up to him. I don't know what it was about Johnny. Maybe that lost puppy look and those big scared eyes were what made everyone his big brother. But they couldn't, no matter how hard they tried, take the place of his parents. I thought about it for a minute. Derry and Soda Pop are my brothers, and I love both of them, even if Derry did scare me, but not even Soda could take Mom and Dad's place. And they were my real brothers, not just sort of adopted ones. No wonder Johnny was hurt because his parents didn't want him. Dally could take it. Dally was the breed that could take anything because he was hard and tough, and when he wasn't, he could turn hard and tough. Johnny was a good fighter and could play it cool, but he was sensitive, and that isn't a good way to be when you're a greaser. Blasted, Johnny, Dally growled as we flew along the red road. Why didn't you think of turning yourself in 5 days ago? It would have saved a lot of trouble. I was scared, Johnny said with conviction. I still am. He ran his finger down one of his short black sideburns. I guess we ruined our hair for nothing, Pony Boy. I guess so. I was glad we were going back. I was sick of that church. I didn't care if I was bald. Dally was scowling, and from long and painful experience, I knew better than to talk to him when his eyes were blazing like that. I'd likely as not get clobbered over the head. That had happened before, just as it had happened to all the gang at one time or another. We rarely fought among ourselves. Derry was the unofficial leader, since he kept his head best. Soda and Steve had been best friends since grade school and never fought, and Two-Bit was just too lazy to argue with anyone. Johnny kept his mouth shut too much to get into arguments, and nobody ever fought with Johnny. I kept my mouth shut, too, but Dally was a different matter. If something beefed him, he didn't keep quiet about it. And if you rubbed him the wrong way, look out. Not even Derry wanted to tangle with him. He was dangerous. Johnny just sat there and stared at his feet. He hated for any one of us to be mad at him. He looked awful sad. Dally glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. I looked out the window. "Johnny," Dally said in a pleading high voice, using a tone I'd never heard from him before. "Johnny, I ain't mad at you. I just don't want you to get hurt. You don't know what a few months in jail can do to you." "Ah, blasted Johnny." He pushed his white blonde hair out of his eyes. "You get hardened in jail. I don't want that to happen to you like it happened to me." I kept staring out the window at the rapidly passing scenery, but I felt my eyes getting round. Dally never talked like that. Never. Dally didn't give a Yankee dime about anyone but himself, and he was cold and hard and mean. He never talked about his past or being in jail that way. If he talked about it at all, it was to brag. And I suddenly thought of Dally, in jail at the age of 10. Dally, growing up in the streets. "Would you rather have me living in hideouts for the rest of my life, always on the run?" Johnny asked seriously. If Dally had said yes, Johnny would have gone back to the church without hesitation. He figured Dally knew more than he did, and Dally's word was law. But he never heard Dally's answer, for we'd reached the top of Jay Mountain, and Dally suddenly slammed on the brakes and stared. "Ah, glory," he whispered. The church was on fire. "Let's go see what the deal is," I said, hopping out. "What for?" Dally sounded irritated. "Get back in here before I beat your head in." I knew Dally would have to park the car and catch me before he could carry out his threat, and Johnny was already out and following me, so I figured I was safe. We could hear him cussing us out, but he wasn't mad enough to come after us. There was a crowd at the front of the church, mostly little kids, and I wondered how they'd gotten there so quickly. I tapped the nearest grown-up. "What's going on?" "Well, we don't know for sure," the man said with a good-natured grin. "We were having a school picnic up here, and the first thing we knew, the place is burning up. Thank goodness this is a wet season, and the old thing is worthless anyway." Then to the kids he shouted, "Stand back, children. The firemen will be coming soon." "I bet we started it," I said to Johnny. "We must have dropped a lighted cigarette or something." About that time, a lady came running up. "Jerry, some of the kids are missing." "They're probably around here somewhere. You can't tell with all this excitement where they might be." "No," she shook her head. "They've been missing for at least a half an hour. I thought they were climbing the hill." Then we all froze. Faintly, just faintly, you could hear someone yelling, and it sounded like it was coming from inside the church. The woman went white. "I told them not to play in the church. I told them." She looked like she was going to start screaming, so Jerry shook her. "I'll get them, don't worry." I started at a dead run for the church, and the man caught my arm. "I'll get them. You kids stay out." I jerked loose and ran on. All I could think was, we started it, we started it, we started it. I wasn't about to go through the flaming door, so I slammed a big rock through the window and I pulled myself in. It was a wonder I didn't cut myself to death now that I think about it. "Hey, pony boy!" I looked around, startled. I hadn't realized that Johnny had been right behind me the whole way. I took a deep breath and I started coughing. The smoke filled my eyes and they started watering. "Is that guy coming?" Johnny shook his head. "The window stopped him." "Too scared?" "Nah," Johnny gave me a grin. "Too fat." I couldn't laugh because I was scared I'd drown in the smoke. The roar and the crackling was getting louder, and Johnny shouted the next question. "Where's the kids?" "In the back, I guess," I hollered, and we started stumbling through the church. I should be scared, I thought, with an odd detached feeling, but I'm not. The cinders and embers began falling on us, stinging and smarting like ants. Suddenly, in the red glow in the haze, I remembered wondering what it was like in a burning ember, and I thought, now I know. It's a red hell. Why ain't I scared? We pushed open the door to the back room and found 4 or 5 little kids, about 8 years old and younger, huddled up in a corner. One was screaming his head off, and Johnny yelled, "Shut up, we're going to get you out." The kid looked surprised and quit hollering. I blinked myself. Johnny wasn't behaving at all like his old self. He looked over his shoulder and he saw that the door was blocked by flames, and then pushed open the window and tossed out the nearest kid. I caught one quick look at his face. It was red-marked from falling embers and sweat streaked, but he grinned at me. He wasn't scared either. That was the only time I could think of when I saw him without that defeated, suspicious look in his eyes. He looked like he was having the time of his life. I picked up a kid and he promptly bit me, but I leaned out the window and I dropped him as gently as I could, being in a hurry like that. A crowd was there by that time. Dally was standing there, and when he saw me, he screamed, "For Pete's sake, get out of there! The roof's going to cave in at any minute! Forget those blasted kids!" I didn't pay any attention, although pieces of the old roof were crashing down too close for comfort. I snatched up another kid, hoping he didn't bite, and dropped him without waiting to see if he landed okay or not. I was coughing so hard I could hardly stand up, and I wished I had time to take off Dally's jacket. It was hot. We dropped the last of the kids out as the front of the church started to crumble. Johnny shoved me toward the window. "Get out!" I leaped out the window and heard the timber crashing and the flames roaring right behind me. I staggered, almost falling, coughing and sobbing for breath. And then I heard Johnny scream, and as I turned to go back for him, Dally swore at me and clubbed me across the back as hard as he could, and I went down into a peaceful darkness.